Glory to Sri Rama. Welcome back to the Valmiki Ramayana session 2. So, in our first session, I tried to give a very high level introduction of Ramayana. Especially, we were talking about the relationship between the Vedas and the Ramayana. We saw that Itihasas and Puranas needs to be used to interpret the Veda, because Vedas itself is afraid of Alpashrutaha. The Vedas themselves are afraid of Alpashrutaha, the misinterpretations, and you know how much damaging it is. And also we found the wonderful relationship between Ramayana and the Gayatri Mantra. Also we studied the fact that the root of the Veda is Dharma. Vedo khilo Dharma. Ramo Vigrahavan Dharma. So that embodiment of Dharma is Rama. That's why Ramayana is considered as a sacred scripture in our literature. I request you to watch the podcast we put out today, because it is by Swami Chidananda Puri. He is one of the well-known teachers of Ramayana and Vedanta. Some of the insights he has been giving is very interesting. He is clearly differentiating between what is Itihasas and Puranas. He is talking about Dharma, etc. So the part 2 is coming, but that's just an FYI. Without further delay, let's get into the Ramayana. Last week we talked about the fact that how many kandos or chapters are there in the Ramayana. There is Bala Kanda, Ayodhya Kanda, Aranya Kanda, Kishkinda Kanda, Sundara Kanda, Yuddha Kanda, and finally there is Uttara Kanda. There are 7 kandos in the Ramayana, and 24,000 shlokas are there in Valmiki Ramayana. And we also saw that there are other Ramayanas like Adhyatma Ramayana, which has around 4,500 shloka. And then we have Tulasidas Ramayana in Hindi. And then Ananda Ramayana, Alpuda Ramayana, Agastya Ramayana. And Tamil we have Kamba Ramayana. And Bengali, Marathi we have Bhavarta Ramayana. Malayalam we have Adhyatma Ramayana. Any of these Ramayanas will be an adaptation of either Adhyatma Ramayana or Valmiki Ramayana, or like taken from both. Now we are going to deep dive or double click into the first canto, Bala Kanda. So that's what we wanted to get started. The approach we are going to follow is we are not going to cover every shloka. It is impossible, humanly impossible to cover 24,000 shlokas. So I'll pick up the right shlokas, and the rest I will cover the stories today. All the important shlokas we will go line by line so that it will be clear to us. Today we will cover one shloka. Every day we will cover at least one shloka, either from Ramayana or related to Ramayana. The first thing is that what is Bala Kanda? Bala Kanda is commonly known as the book of beginning. It introduces Rama. It introduces why Rama's story is important for all of us. And also it introduces how this Rama's story was narrated by sage Valmiki, and what are all the incidents leading to the design of this story in this particular format. And all these things are unfolded. That is the beginning of the text. And then, obviously, it starts with the beginning of Rama's earthly life, the birth of Rama. And then the first assignment of Rama, supporting Vishwamitra. And that is where he started guarding the Dharma. He is learning from Vishwamitra, and he fights with Tataka, Maricha, Subahu, and then the Shapa Moksha of Ahalya, then going to Mithila, the marriage with Sita Devi, and on his way back, his encounter with Parashurama. This is the total subject matter covered in the Bala Kanda. Just a high-level overview. And in the handout, I gave the clear structure. There are 76 sargas, 76 chapters in the Bala Kanda. So there are 7 major sections of Ramayana, each known as a Kanda. And the Bala Kanda has 76 sargas. And whatever I just discussed is covered in that 76 sargas. Even though we are following the Valmiki Ramayana, I promised I will cover some of the key points from the other major Ramayanas. One point I highlighted last week, which I wanted to re-emphasize, is the fact that Why there are so many Ramayanas? Each Ramayana look at Rama from a different angle. Rama's personality is so wide, it cannot be limited to one dimension. Valmiki is not teaching any Vedanta. If you look at Valmiki Ramayana, you won't see any Vedantic teachings there. But when you look at Adhyatma Ramayana, it's full of Vedanta. In our class, we will definitely pull out those Vedantic ideas from Adhyatma Ramayana. Valmiki Ramayana, 2 or 3 places he mentions that Rama is an incarnation of Bhagavan Vishnu. And Adhyatma Ramayana presents him as an avatar of Ishwar. That's a big difference. And when you look at the Tamil version of the Ramayana, Kamba Ramayana, you could see the Bala Kanda again narrating the story of Rama, but with a beautiful Tamil literature style. Like you would see beautiful poetry, you would see a lot of devotion in that. That is the approach. Tulsidas ji took a hybrid approach. You could see that devotion in Tulsidas ji, and also you could see some of the divinity of Rama, and you could see some Dharma aspect of the Rama. These are the quick comparison of Balakandas of the different Ramayanas. I don't want to avoid controversies also. When we present the facts, we need to share everything. Some people, at least some scholars, believe that this portions of Balakanda, of Valmiki Ramayana, and the Uttarakanda, some of them was infiltrations added later. Yes, there are some additions in the Uttarakanda. We will definitely talk about that. But people argue that Balakanda also there are some additions because they say that in any other portions, Valmiki is not talking about the divinity of Rama. The only place he talks about the divinity is the birth of the Rama. That is one set of scholars argue that it is not really Valmiki's words, somebody else added. But the counter argument is the fact that even Valmiki wanted to establish Rama as an incarnation of Bhagavan Mahavishnu. Then he wanted to focus mainly on the Rama as a Maryada Purushottama. I personally feel that that is the right way of looking at it. Let's move on to the first Sarga of the Valmiki Ramayana. The first Sarga of the Valmiki Ramayana is known as Samkshepa Ramayana. It is known as the Ramayana in a brief. Before the story unfolds, you get a glimpse or a concise summary of Rama's life. In movies, you try to establish a character with some beautiful shots or with some beautiful incidents. You see, these master movie makers do that. Like that, the first Sarga of the Valmiki Ramayana establishes Rama. That is the purpose of the first Sarga of the Valmiki Ramayana. It is a summary of Rama's life history and also why one need to learn about Rama. So that is the whole subject matter of the first Sarga. There are 100 shlokas in the first Sarga. When we study Bhagavad Gita, it's overall 700 shlokas only. Mind you, right? This is Valmiki Ramayana has 7 cantos, and the first canto itself has 76 sargas, and the first sarga itself has 100 shlokas. This is the vastness or the breadth of the Ramayana. The first point is the Samkshepa Ramayana. Here, let me just break down how this chapter is organized. The key topics covered. The very first shloka is a question from Valmiki. He approaches Narada and asks a question. And first shloka establishes who is the teacher, who is the student, and how the student approach the teacher. Here, student is Maharshi Valmiki, and the teacher is Maharshi Narada, and how the student Valmiki approached Maharshi Narada. This is the shloka number 1. And shloka 2 to 4 is Valmiki's great question to Narada. Is there a human being who is ideal, who is a role model for the entire humanity, the one who possesses all the noble qualities? So that is the second topic. So Valmiki's question, the first shloka is Valmiki approaches Narada. Second one is Valmiki's great question. And shloka 5, Narada is about to answer. And shloka 6 to 18, Narada describes, yes, I know a role model among the human being, and that is Rama, and his qualities are described. Valmiki asked 16 qualities. He asked, is there a person in whom these 16 qualities are there? And Narada responds approximately with 32 qualities. Rama has these 32 qualities. We need to study those qualities, and you can really map that to the modern ethical, moral leadership framework. I'll show that. And then Narada didn't stop there. Narada continued to discuss not just Rama's qualities. From Shloka 19 to 76, he talks about Rama's life history so far. What happened to Rama? The whole history of Rama is narrated. That is the Ramayana summary. Like, he talks about Rama's birth, his in the exile, Ravana's taking Sita, alliance with Sugriva, Hanumanji's mission, the war, Ravana's fall, and the return up to that is covered by Shloka 19 to 76. 77 to 99 talks about Rama Rajya. You all know, like, what is Mahatma Gandhi was dreaming, like Rama Rajya, the ideal kingdom, a kingdom where the king is living for the subjects. That is what is Rama Rajya. You get a glimpse of that. And finally, the last three shlokas, 98 to 100, talks about the benefit of studying Ramayana. This is the structure of the Bala Kanda. So, having said that, now let's get into the first shloka of Valmiki Ramayana. That's what we are going to study today in the next few minutes. So, I will show you. Let me share the screen. And I will share with sound. Hope the screen is seen. The first shloka is visible. So let's play the first shloka.
तपस्वाध्याय निरतम् तपस्वी वाग्विदाम्बरम् नारदं परिपप्रच्छ वाल्मीकिर्मुनिपुङ्गवम्.
This is in Anushtup Chandaha, studying Bhagavad Gita. Exact same meter. You could see that. Tapaswatyaya niratam, tapasvi vakvidambaram, naradam pariprapracha, Valmiki Munipungava. So it set the stage. I'm going to go over this back. It's very interesting. Let's understand the meaning first. Its simple literal meaning is Maharshi Valmiki approached Maharshi Narada and asked some questions in a very respectful manner. That's the implied meaning. But, like the poetic beauty and what is encapsulated in this shloka is amazing. It introduces who is Valmiki, who is Narada, and how Valmiki approached Narada. These are the three themes covered. Let's take a step back and do a little bit of analysis. Remember, Valmiki's story we discussed last week. What exactly transformed the Ratnakara into Valmiki siege? A bandit into a siege was transformed by the Ramanama. There is no doubt about it. Valmiki was a contemporary of Rama. Later you see, when Rama went to forest, he meets Valmiki in his ashram. Valmiki knows the greatness of Rama. So why did he ask this question? If somebody knows Rama, Ramo Vigrahavan Dharma, it is very clear. In spite of that knowledge, why did he ask? See, this particular incident is happening after the Uttarakanda. So the whole Ramayana is a flashback. Right now, all these incidents of the Ramayana happened. Rama is ruling the kingdom. Sita Devi was abandoned, and she is living with Maharshi Valmiki with two kids, Lava and Kusha. That is the time. So naturally, a lot of people may think, why did Rama do this? I don't know whether Valmiki had that doubt, but he definitely wanted to clear that in front of the universe. That could be one reason. This is not directly said in Ramayana. This is said in the traditional commentaries. There are 12 or 13 different commentaries of Ramayana. So the commentators point this out, which is logical because people may take one or two incidents from Rama's life and try to judge him. Maybe the incident of Vali, or modern days people talk about Shampuga or Sita Parityaga and try to judge Rama. Valmiki wanted to clarify that point. Could be one reason. Now let's go to the shloka. The shloka is very, very nice shloka. It starts with the word tapa. Narada is described through different Visheshanas. The first one is tapa swadhyaya niratam. That is the first thing. The one who is always engaged in tapas and swadhyaya. That is the first quality of Narada. What is tapas? Tapas literally means, tapa means like tapa means heat. Tapas means it is discipline, like consistent effort you put, focused effort you put towards a goal. That is what is tapas. So Narada always put that effort in his spiritual path. That is what is tapas. Discipline, austerity, focused effort. That is tapas. The consistent effort is required to purify the mind and committed to a higher goal. And with that word, Maharshi Valmiki clearly tells that Narada is such a good teacher. One more thing. There is a tradition in our culture. Whenever we start a big work, you start with a word of Mangalacharana. So if you think about Bhagavad Gita, it is Dharma. Dharma Kshetriye Kurukshetriye. And the last word is Mama. Mama Dharma is the theme of the Bhagavad Gita. So Tapa is indicating a Mangalacharana. When you start the Ramayana, it starts with the word Tapa. That's another way of looking at it. And when you really look at Gayatri Mantra and Ramayana connection, I tried to explain that last week. Every 1,000 mantra of Ramayana or shloka of Ramayana is the next syllable of Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra starts with Ta. So look at this. That's also a connection. Tapas. Narada is a sage who is committed in tapas. And the next one is Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means what? Very simple scriptural study. The second one is self-study. It is the repetition of the mantras and the study of the Vedanta, the study of the Vedas, all that comes under the Swadhyaya. The practice through which the knowledge becomes personal and transformative. Swadhyaya, a teacher is introduced, one who is very much committed in tapas and Swadhyaya. The word Nirata means deeply engaged, absorbed, always. So he's not a casual seeker. He is always interested, always committed in tapas and Swadhyaya. He is always established in that tapas and Swadhyaya. And the next quality of Narada is Vakvidambara. Vak means word. Vidwan means master. Varam means one who possesses the art of communication. So what is the quality a teacher needs? One is obviously that the teacher has to have the knowledge. The knowledge is very important. Second thing is what? Even if you have knowledge, if you cannot communicate it, you cannot teach somebody. Here Narada is presented as Tapaswatyaya Nirata, Vakvidambara. One who mastered the art of communication. The Upanishads defines a good teacher as Kshotriya and Brahmanishta. Brahmanishta is the one who is established and stays in the knowledge that I am Brahman. And Kshotriya means what? The one who can communicate that nicely. So look at that. Two definitions fit very well with Narada. See, look at the Talpari of Veda, how it is personified into personalities and expressed in Ramayana. And then that Naradam, Tapaswatyaya Niradam, Vakvidambaram, Narada is introduced as another word, Muni Pungavam. He is foremost among the sages because he combines knowledge, devotion, silence, and self-realization. Because of that, he is described as Muni Pungavam. So, Tapaswatyaya Niratam, Vakvidamvaram, and Munipungavam. These are the three Visheshanas Valmiki used to describe Narada. And then he describes himself as tapasvi. He is a one person who is committed to spiritual practices. Look at the way how he introduced both the people. Narada is a master. He is a student or somebody who is trying to practice this tapas. That is Valmiki. The student is introduced as Valmiki, as a tapasvi, and Narada was introduced as a not just a tapasvi, Munipunga, who is always committed to tapas and swadhyaya, and who is a master of all communication. This is Narada's Visheshan. And then Pariprapracha, he asked respectfully and properly. Pariprapracha. Prapracha means asked a question. He approached Maharshi Narada and asked this question. That is the first sloka. Tapaswatyaya niradam, tapasvi vagvidambaram, naradam pariprapracha, Valmiki munipum. So you can see, this is the tapaswatyaya niradam, tapasvi vagvidambaram, naradam pariprapracha, Valmiki munipangavam. Narada, the most qualified teacher, Valmiki, a sincere seeker, and he approached respectfully. It tells us how these sacred teachings happens. You have to have discipline, study, a qualified teacher, sincere seeker, and a profound question in a proper manner. In Bhagavad Gita, you hear Tatvitti Pratipadena Pariprachena Prasnena Seveya. It happens exactly like that. Now, before we close out, one more final point. The key teachings is the first shloka is Ramayana begins with tapas. This shows that the sacred wisdom requires discipline and inner preparation. Narada is qualified not because of anything else. He is established in tapas and swadhyaya, and then he is a master communicator. Valmiki is an ideal student because he approaches with humility and asks sincere questions. That's it. This is very important. And this tapas and swadhyaya is very important. One is discipline, and the second one is the knowledge and self-study. One without the other is not easy. You cannot acquire knowledge without discipline, and without discipline, knowledge will not come, and without knowledge, the discipline also will not come. The combination of these two were ideal. Now, there is a myth buster. Usually, in our common discussions, what's our perception of Maharshi Narada? People think that he is somebody who goes and make fights. Even we, without thinking, uses that terminology. So please listen to the podcast. Swamiji is elaborating that topic. It just happened, coincidence. But you cannot fit Narada into a framework. He transcends all these frameworks. I'll highlight a few points about Maharshi Narada before we just make fun of him. We just need to understand how should we consider Narada? Why Narada is the ideal guide? If there is one sage who is revered across all the different disciplines of Sanatana Dharma, whether it is Shaiva, Vaishnava, Shakteya, Ganapatya, all these traditions. If you take Shiva Purana, you see Narada. If you take like Devi Bhagavatam, you see Narada. If you take Vishnu Purana, you see Narada. If you take Ganapati Purana, Garuda Purana, all the 18 Puranas, if there is one sage honored equally, that is Narada. This shows that Narada is not just limited to one tradition alone. He represents that universal spiritual authority. In the Puranas, you could see is equally respected by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So that is another good point of view of Narada. He was not a Shaivite. He was, even though he say Narayana, Narayana, he's equally respected by Bhagavan Shiva also. And he is described as a cosmic traveler. He travels freely across all the worlds. So that's another thing. He's always the divine messengers. Like critical times, he carries that divine messages in Puranas. So that's another thing. And then he is not just presented in the Purana literature alone. You can see Narada even in the Vedas, there is one Upanishad called Naradiya Parivrajaka Upanishad. So understand his importance. There is even one Upanishad in his name. And he is presented in both the Itihasas, 18 Puranas, not just the 18 Purana. He appears both in Ramayana and Mahabharata. And then he is the composer of the Bhakti Sutra. Like in the Sutra literature, you have Yoga Sutra, Brahma Sutra, and Bhakti Sutra. Narada is the composer of the Bhakti Sutra. And he is considered as a master in the Sangeeta Shastra. He carries a veena and he has a lot of knowledge about music. That is very important. And then, like, he is presented as not just an expert in the Vedas, but an expert in the Vedangas also. Vedangas means the phonetics, grammar, and all those things. And he is considered as a guru of gurus. He taught several people. Look at Valmiki, look at Prahlada, look at Dhruva. All these great seekers, great devotees of the Lord were guided by Narada. And as we saw, he is Vagvidamvaram, he is Munipungava, and that is why Maharshi Valmiki highlighted Narada as one of the teacher, because he knew all the sages, but he asked this question only to Narada. And if you remember, it is Narada who helped Maharshi Valmiki also. Okay, we can stop here. We'll continue next week. I will do the prayer, closing prayer.
श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यम् रामनाम वरान.
Just meditate upon the name of Rama. It will bring that happiness in your mind. It is like chanting the 1,000 names of Vishnu. Excellent prayer. Alexander rendered it for us. It's nice prayer. Thank you.